While I was away on vacation, my mom sold my home to clear my sister's $214,000 debt. When I returned, they laughed, "Now you're homeless." I just smiled. "What's so funny?" They snapped, annoyed. I said the house they sold wasn't mine anymore. I never thought a single voicemail could shatter my entire world. But when I finally listened, it wasn't just my life that shifted, it was a betrayal so deep I knew I could never go back. The humid air in Rodney Bay felt heavy, sticky against my skin as I stared at my phone screen, the sheer volume of missed calls and messages a cold slap in the face. My vacation, my first real break in 7 years, had been pure bliss, filled with sunrises and the sound of waves. Now, just moments before my flight back to Denver, that peace was gone. I'm Ethan, 32. For the last decade, I've been the family's go-to problem solver. My younger sister, Chloe, is 28, perpetually broke, and somehow convinced that irresponsibility is a personality trait. She's bounced through 6 jobs in 3 years, leased cars she couldn't afford, and racked up credit card debt buying designer clothes for Instagram. She even crashed on my couch twice after getting evicted. Meanwhile, I'd worked my way up in Denver real estate, paying off loans at 26, buying my first investment property at 28, and even helping my parents, Karen and Mark, refinance their mortgage when Mark's roofing business slowed. Karen called me her rock, Mark the responsible one. Chloe just said I was boring and needed to loosen up. Honestly, I didn't think much of it, that's just how our family worked. I fixed things, Chloe made messes, and my parents pretended everything was fine. This vacation to St. Lucia was my revolution. No client calls, no family emergencies, just me, the ocean, and a thriller. My boss practically forced me to go, telling me I was 32, not 62, and needed to take the damn break. So I did. I rented a beachfront condo, packed light, and did the unthinkable, I turned my phone off. Not silent, off. I told my parents I'd check in midweek, told my assistant to handle anything urgent, and for the first time in years, I just existed. Waking up to sunrises, snorkeling, falling asleep to waves. It felt like breathing after holding your breath underwater. I remember thinking on day 4, salt drying on my skin, this is what life should feel like. I wasn't the family ATM. I was just Ethan, watching the sunset paint the sky pink and orange. Then came the last day. I switched my phone back on. It took a full minute to load, and when it did, my stomach dropped. 47 missed calls, 63 text messages, 12 voicemails. Mostly Karen, a few from Mark, and surprisingly, 3 from Chloe. My heart started pounding because, in my family, that many messages meant death or disaster. I opened the texts first. Karen's messages escalated from "call when you can" to "it's urgent to call now." Chloe's were blunt, "You're gonna be pissed, but whatever, Mom did what she had to do." Mark's voicemails were stiff, like he was reading a script, saying, "Karen made a decision, it was complicated." I sat on the condo balcony in my swim trunks, listening to Karen's final voicemail. Her voice was shaky but defiant. She knew I'd be upset, but Chloe was in real trouble. Creditors were threatening legal action, Chloe would lose everything. They had no choice. They sold my house to pay off her debts. It was done, the closing happened yesterday. She was sorry I had to find out this way, but I wasn't answering, and they couldn't wait. I played it twice, just to make sure. Sold my house to pay off Chloe's debts. My 3-bedroom craftsman bungalow in the Highlands neighborhood, the one I bought 4 years ago. The one I renovated myself, the garden I planted, the porch where I drank coffee every Sunday. They sold it without asking, without telling me, until it was already done. I felt cold despite the 80-degree heat. My hands shook, not yet from anger, but from sheer disbelief. I called Karen back immediately. She answered on the first ring, relief flooding her voice, "Thank God." I was so worried. I cut her off. "What the hell are you talking about? You sold my house?" She sighed, like I was being difficult, and explained Chloe owed $214,000 from credit cards, personal loans, and a defaulted car lease. They were going to sue her, garnish her wages, ruin her credit. They had to help. I repeated, louder this time, "You sold my house? How is that even possible? It wasn't yours to sell." Karen hesitated. I heard Mark murmuring in the background. Then she explained, "I'd given her power of attorney last year when I was closing a deal in Texas. And technically, the deed had both our names from when she co-signed my original mortgage." My blood ran cold. She was right. When I bought the house at 28, I was still building credit, so Karen co-signed as a favor. I'd meant to refinance and remove her name, but I got busy. And yes, I'd given her limited power of attorney last year when I was stuck in Dallas for a 3-week closing and needed someone to sign paperwork on a rental property. I never imagined she'd use it like this. I tried to stay calm. That power of attorney was for one specific transaction. And co-signing doesn't give you the right to sell my house without my consent. That's fraud. That's illegal. Karen snapped back, her tone shifting from apologetic to defensive. "Don't be dramatic. We did what we had to do to save your sister. You've always been the strong one, you'll bounce back. Chloe wouldn't survive this." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm supposed to lose my home because Chloe can't stop buying $1,000 handbags? Karen said coldly, "It's done. The buyer already moved in. The money was transferred to pay off Chloe's creditors. You can stay with us until you figure things out. We'll make it work." I hung up. I didn't yell, didn't argue further. I just ended the call and sat there, staring at the ocean, my mind racing. They sold my home, the place I'd built my life in, and acted like I should just accept it, like I was some bottomless well of resources they could dip into whenever Chloe screwed up. I felt anger, betrayal, shock. But underneath it all, something colder. Clarity. Because they didn't know something. Something I'd set up 6 months ago after Chloe tried to guilt me into co-signing a loan for a scam business idea. I'd gotten smart. I'd protected myself. And the house they sold? It wasn't actually mine. Not legally. Not anymore. I booked the first flight back to Denver. Barely slept on the red-eye and landed at DIA at 6 in the morning. I didn't go home, well, to the house that used to be mine. I went straight to a coffee shop near my office, ordered a black coffee, and opened my laptop. I pulled up the documents I needed, the ones I'd filed 6 months ago with my real estate attorney, Sarah Miller, a sharp woman who specialized in asset protection. Back in October, after Chloe's loan stunt, I'd gotten paranoid. I loved my family, but I wasn't stupid. So, I did what any smart real estate agent would do. I transferred ownership of my house into an LLC. Willow Pine Holdings LLC. A single-member limited liability company, with me as the sole owner and manager. The property deed was no longer in my name or Karen's. It was owned by the LLC. Which meant Karen's co-signature on the old mortgage was irrelevant. And her power of attorney? Absolutely nothing. She couldn't sell what she didn't legally own. I sat there in that coffee shop, staring at the LLC documents, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years: control. They thought they'd backed me into a corner. Thought I'd just roll over and accept being homeless because family comes first. They were wrong. Dead wrong. I took a long sip of coffee, closed my laptop, and smiled. Not a happy smile, a cold, calculated one. Because I wasn't going to yell or beg or guilt trip them. I was going to do something much worse. I was going to let them think they'd won. And then I was going to show them exactly what happens when you steal from someone who actually knows the law. I drove to the house around noon. My house, or rather, the house they thought they'd sold. It was a sunny Saturday. As I pulled up to the curb, I saw 3 people on the front porch: Karen, Chloe, and a middle-aged guy in khakis and a polo shirt holding a folder. The new owner, I assumed. Karen looked nervous when she saw my car, but Chloe had this smug little smirk, like she'd just won the lottery. I parked, got out, and walked up the driveway slowly, keeping my expression neutral. Karen stepped forward, hands clasped, saying she didn't expect me back so soon. I told her that finding out your family sold your house tends to ruin a vacation. The guy in khakis looked uncomfortable. He introduced himself as David Chen, explaining he bought this property 3 days ago. The sale was finalized, and he had the signed deed. He held up the folder like a shield. I glanced at it, then back at Karen. "You signed the deed?" She said defensively, "I had power of attorney, and I was on the original mortgage, so it was legal." Their lawyer confirmed it. I raised an eyebrow. "You mean the guy Mark uses for his business contracts? The one who does commercial roofing disputes?" Karen's face flushed. She admitted he'd said it was fine. Chloe crossed her arms, leaning against the porch railing. "Stop being so dramatic, Ethan. You'll get another house. You're a real estate agent, for crying out loud." Meanwhile, I was drowning in debt, and Mom saved my life. "Show some gratitude." I stared at her for a long moment. I could see Mark's roofing truck parked down the street, meaning he was probably hiding inside, too scared to face me. Classic. I asked Chloe slowly, "You want me to be grateful that you racked up $214,000 in debt buying crap you didn't need? And Mom decided the solution was to steal my house?" Karen snapped, "We didn't steal it. We sold it legally to pay off your sister's debts. You would have done the same thing if you weren't so selfish." David Chen cleared his throat. "I don't want to get in the middle of a family thing, but I paid $380,000 for this house. The sale is done. I have the deed, the title, everything. I'm sorry if there was confusion, but legally, this is my property now." I finally looked at him, and I almost felt bad for the guy. Almost. "Did you hire a title company to process the sale?" He said, "Of course I did. I'm not an idiot. I used First National Title. They did the full title search, confirmed ownership, everything checked out." I asked him, "Who did they say owned the property?" David hesitated, glancing at Karen, then explained, "The deed showed Ethan and Karen as co-owners. Karen signed on your behalf using power of attorney. It was all verified." I nodded slowly, then pulled out my phone. "That deed, the one showing me and my mom as co-owners? That's 4 years old. It's outdated. 6 months ago, I transferred ownership of this property into a limited liability company called Willow Pine Holdings LLC. The current legal owner of this house isn't me. It isn't my mom. It's the LLC. Which means the deed you signed is worthless." The silence that followed was deafening. David Chen's face went pale. "What do you mean?" Karen's voice rose. "You can't just transfer ownership without telling anyone." I replied calmly, "Actually, I can. It's called asset protection. I filed the transfer with the county recorder's office 6 months ago. It's public record. If Mr. Chen's title company had done their job properly, they would have caught it. But they didn't. Which means this sale is invalid. Mr. Chen doesn't own this house. Willow Pine Holdings does, and I'm the sole member of that LLC." David looked like he might pass out. "I paid your mother $380,000. I told him, not unkindly, "You're going to need to get that money back because the person who sold you this house didn't have the legal authority to do so. I suggest you contact your title company immediately and start the process of unwinding the sale. You might also want to talk to a lawyer." Chloe's smug expression had completely disappeared. "Does this mean the sale doesn't count?" I said, "Nope. It didn't count because you can't sell what you don't own." Karen's face turned red. This is ridiculous. Are you going to let your sister lose everything over a technicality? I repeated the word back at her, my voice finally rising. This wasn't a technicality. You committed fraud. You sold property you didn't own using power of attorney you didn't have the right to use. If Mr. Chen wanted to, he could sue you for every penny he gave you, and he'd win. David Chen was already on his phone, frantically dialing, saying he needed to speak to his lawyer now. He walked off toward his car, shouting into his phone about title insurance and legal action. Chloe looked at Karen, panic creeping into her voice. What does this mean? If the sale didn't count, do I have to pay the money back? Karen didn't answer. She just stared at me like I'd betrayed her. You can't do this. Chloe will be sued. She'll lose everything. I said coldly, she already lost everything. That's why we're in this mess. And now you dragged an innocent buyer into your scheme, and you committed fraud. Congratulations. Chloe shouted, this is my fault? If you just helped me in the first place, none of this would have happened. I laughed. Actually laughed. I told Chloe, I've been helping you my entire adult life. I co-signed your first apartment lease. I paid your car insurance when you were unemployed. I lent you $5,000 for that business idea you never paid back. I've been your safety net for a decade. And this is how you repaid me? By letting Mom sell my house? Chloe yelled that they didn't think I'd care this much. It was just a house. I roared back, it was my house. Both of them flinched. I took a breath, forced myself to calm down. Here's what's going to happen. I'm contacting my attorney. She's going to send you both a cease and desist letter. If you try to contest the LLC transfer, if you try to claim any ownership of this property, I will bury you in legal fees. And Mr. Chen is going to sue you for fraud, and he's going to win, because you sold him property you didn't own. So whatever money you used to pay off Chloe's debts, you better hope you can get it back, because you're going to need it. Karen's eyes filled with tears. We're family. I said quietly, family doesn't steal from each other. And you're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught. I turned and walked back to my car. Behind me, I heard Chloe shouting something and Karen crying, but I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove away. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. But underneath all of it, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, free. I went straight to Sarah Miller's office. She was in on a Saturday because real estate attorneys in Denver don't really get weekends off. I laid out everything, Karen's fraudulent sale, David Chen's invalid deed, Chloe's debts. Sarah listened, made notes, and when I finished, she leaned back in her chair and smiled. She said this was the cleanest case of attempted title fraud she'd ever seen. Karen didn't have a leg to stand on. The LLC transfer was rock solid. We'd file a quiet title action to officially confirm Willow Pine Holdings as the rightful owner, send a demand letter to my mother and the buyer, and within 30 days, this whole mess would be resolved. I asked what would happen to the buyer. Sarah explained he'd get his money back through title insurance. That's what title insurance was for, situations exactly like this. He'd be made whole, and his insurance company would go after Karen to recover the funds. She was the one who was going to be on the hook. I nodded slowly and said, "Good." Sarah's tone softened. "Are you okay? This is your family, after all. That has to be hard." I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. I thought it would be, but honestly, I feel lighter than I have in years. Over the next 2 weeks, everything unfolded exactly as Sarah predicted. David Chen's title insurance company confirmed the sale was invalid and refunded his $380,000. They then filed a claim against Karen to recover the funds, but since she'd already transferred the money to Chloe's creditors, she didn't have it. The insurance company threatened legal action, and Mark had to take out a second mortgage on their house to pay it back. Chloe's creditors, meanwhile, were informed that the payments were being reversed and her debts were reinstated. She was right back where she started, except now she'd burned every bridge with me. Karen called me 17 times in those 2 weeks. I didn't answer. Chloe sent texts ranging from apologetic to furious. I blocked her number. Mark finally showed up at my office, looking exhausted and ashamed. He said quietly that Karen was a wreck and didn't mean for it to go this way. I said flatly, she meant to steal my house. The only thing she didn't mean was to get caught. Mark asked if we could work this out, saying we were family. I looked at him for a long moment. This man who taught me how to throw a baseball and change a tire, and I felt nothing. No anger, no love, just indifference. I told him he stood by and let her do it. He didn't call me, didn't warn me, didn't stop her. He was just as guilty. He left without another word. And that was it. The legal battle was over. The house was officially, irrevocably mine again. And my family? They were strangers now. You'd think that would be the end of it. But with my family, nothing is ever that simple. Over the next month, the calls kept coming. Not from Karen or Chloe. They'd finally gotten the message. But from aunts, uncles, cousins, people I barely talked to, suddenly very concerned about family unity. My Aunt Lisa called me at work one afternoon, her voice dripping with passive-aggressive sympathy, saying Karen was devastated and only wanted to help Chloe. Didn't I think I was being a little harsh? I told her, Mom committed fraud. If I'd done that to a client, I'd lose my license and go to jail. Lisa insisted that family forgives. I said, family also doesn't steal from each other, and hung up. My Uncle Robert tried the guilt trip approach, saying Mark's health wasn't great and all this stress. Did I want that on my conscience? I didn't even respond to that one. The thing is, they didn't actually care about me. They cared about the fact that I wasn't playing my role anymore, the reliable son, the family ATM, the guy who fixed everyone's problems while his own life fell apart. And now that I'd stepped out of that role, they didn't know what to do with me. 8 weeks after I got back from St. Lucia, Karen sent me a letter. Not an email, not a text, an actual handwritten letter delivered to my office. I almost threw it away, but curiosity got the better of me. It was 3 pages long, and she apologized, sort of. She said she never meant to hurt me and only wanted to save Chloe. She hoped we could move past this as a family. And then, in the final paragraph, she got to the real point. She said they were struggling financially because of the legal fees and the second mortgage. Chloe still owed money, and the creditors were threatening her again. I was the only one who could help. If I could just lend them $50,000, they could get back on their feet. She promised they'd pay me back. I read it twice. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I laughed out loud, alone in my office. I laughed until my stomach hurt because after everything, after the fraud, the lies, the manipulation, the complete disregard for my life, she was asking me for money again. That's all I'd ever been to them, a resource, a solution, a wallet with a heartbeat. I didn't respond to the letter. I just filed it away with all the other legal documents from this mess. 2 months later, my parents made one last attempt. They invited me to Sunday dinner. And part of me, maybe the stupid, hopeful part, wanted to believe they'd finally realized what they'd done. So, I went. Big mistake. Karen was overly cheerful. Mark was stiff and awkward. And Chloe sat at the table with her arms crossed like a teenager forced to attend family therapy. For 20 minutes, it was painfully polite small talk. Then halfway through the meal, Karen cleared her throat and said they'd come up with a plan. Chloe was going to move in with them to save money. And since you have that big house all to yourself, maybe you could take out a home equity line of credit to help them cover some expenses? Just temporarily, of course. I said, no. Just that. No explanation, no discussion, just no. Mark's voice turned sharp. You owe us. I stood up. I don't owe you anything. I've spent the last decade bailing this family out of every crisis. And the one time I set a boundary, you called me selfish. You sold my house. You committed fraud. You didn't apologize. You asked for more money. So, no, I don't owe you a damn thing. Chloe called me a selfish jerk. I told her she was a leech who'd been sucking this family dry for years, and the second someone said no, she threw a tantrum. Karen started crying. How can you say that about your sister? I said, she's a 30-year-old woman who's never taken responsibility for her life, and you've enabled her every step of the way. You want to help her? Fine. But leave me out of it. As I walked toward the door, Karen followed me. If you walk out, don't come back. I stopped, turned, and said, good. Because I wasn't planning to. I left, got in my car, drove away, and never looked back. And I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel sad. I felt free. It's been 6 months since that dinner. I haven't spoken to my parents or Chloe since. I blocked their numbers, unfriended them on social media, and moved on with my life. I heard through the grapevine that Chloe declared bankruptcy and is living with my parents rent-free. Karen and Mark are struggling with the second mortgage but refuse to downsize. They still think I'm the villain in this story. Maybe I am. I don't really care, because I'm happy now. Genuinely, actually happy. I sold one of my investment properties and bought a bigger house in Lohi, a beautiful craftsman with a view of the city. I wake up every morning, make coffee, and sit on my porch watching the sunrise. I don't check my phone for crisis messages. I don't worry about whose problem I'm going to solve today. I just live. I started dating someone, joined a hiking group, and even took a weekend trip to Austin just because I felt like it. Little things, normal things, things I never had time for when I was busy being everyone's emergency contact. And I don't miss them. My family, I mean. I thought I would. Thought there'd be this gaping hole where they used to be, but there isn't. There's just peace. Last week, I got an email from Karen saying Mark had a minor heart attack last month. He was okay now, but it was a scare. She wanted me to know in case something happened. She wasn't asking me to come back, just asking me to think about it. I read it twice, waiting for the guilt to hit, for the old instinct to kick in and make me rush to their side. But it didn't come. I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just a distant acknowledgement that this was their life, not mine. I didn't respond. Maybe that makes me cold. Maybe it makes me a bad son. I don't know. What I do know is this: I love my family, I just don't pay their bills. If that makes me the villain, fine. I've got a life to live. What would you have done in my shoes?